And she's live. Good evening, everybody. It is 6:20. I'm Caroline Flanagan. I am a coach. I'm a keynote speaker. I am the host of the Caroline Flanagan podcast, and I'm the author of Be the First, the book. And today I'm here to talk to you in my regular Monday evening live. I'm here to talk to you about your backstory. Now, it may not be a word you're familiar with, you may not have thought about it very much, which is why I'm here to tell you why it's important, and in particular, why it's important that you own it. So what is your backstory? Your backstory is effectively everything that has happened to you on the way that led you to here. But it's not about the successes. It's not about the highlights, the victories that you've had along the way. It's about all of the failures. It's about the setbacks, the stumbles, the hurdles, and all the challenges you've experienced along the way. I like to describe it to my clients as being, if you imagine that there are lots of stepping stones behind you that have led you to where you are today, whether it's your position in your job or your role in your family, whether you're a parent or whatever other roles you play. There are all those kind of successful things that have led you to this point, but there are also the disappointments, the times when things didn't go as expected, the times when you had setbacks and maybe you were let down by something or someone, the times basically that we would rather forget. So if you imagine the successes being like stepping stones to where you are now, your backstory is really the bit where you've tried to aim for a stepping stone, but you've fallen in the water and you've had to haul yourself back up again, get yourself out of the water, and find the energy, the determination, the motivation to get back on your feet and keep going. That's what your backstory is. And the reason why it's really important, I want to share it with you today, is because everybody has a backstory. So whether you know it or not, your backstory is working away in the background and it's affecting your life. It's affecting how you show up. So the question isn't, do you have a backstory? The question really is your backstory working for you or against you? And the reality is that unless you are conscious of it, unless you are being intentional about how you think about your backstory, the chances are it is holding you back. It is working against you. So by way of an example, let me talk about a mistake that I used to make. So I would think about certain parts of my past and feel really disappointed, feel angry and frustrated about them. If you've bought my book and read it, the book Be the First, then you will have read about some of the very real challenges that I experienced as a kid growing up and also as a young adult, and how difficult they were. And I had there are lots of things in my past that I would really rather have forgotten. And that's what I did. I kind of left them there in the dark corners of my mind, never ever went back there, because for me they were just disappointments, time I was let down, or failures that I didn't want to think about, maybe made me feel bad about myself. So that's until I realized that I was leaving almost all of my power behind me, like locked up, not accessible. What I was doing by not thinking about those challenges that I'd been through was basically shutting myself off from my resourcefulness, from the creativity I've had to show in the face of those challenges, the determination, the motivation that it required to get back up again after every single setback, after every failure. So as long as I was ignoring the bad things that I'd been through in the past, I was also avoiding or missing out on the really positive qualities and attributes that those experiences really demonstrated about me. So let me give you an example. An example I like to give is, I talk about, on the one hand, being evicted when I was in my A-level year, about, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks before doing my A-levels. Obviously not a very nice experience, not one I want to go back to very often, at least I didn't. But now, when I think about that, I actually don't think about the pain of being evicted, how uncomfortable that was. I think about how incredible it was, I was still able to knuckle down and crack on with my A levels. I found a way. So I was determined. I was really resourceful in terms of being able to ask friends if I could stay at their place so that I could focus on my studies. Yeah, and I was stayed positive and really focused on my goal. And to have done that in such challenging circumstances says a lot about me, right? And most importantly, it says the kind of thing about me that I want to be able to draw on and use the next time I experience a setback or something doesn't go as I expected. Another illustration I like to give is and I use this example in the book, is when I talk about having my 4 children. So I've got 4 boys, Dylan, Noah, Max, and Luca, and I had them all basically without any pain relief. And the reason why I was able to do that is because after my first experience of having Dylan, who's now, he's about to turn 18, unbelievably, getting through that and experiencing that, I was able to, when I was then pregnant the second time, refer back to all of the resources that I had used up or been able to draw on when I was in labour with Dylan. So what that meant was, with each following pregnancy, I could become more and more confident that I could cope with whatever labour threw at me in terms of sort of pain and discomfort. It's a bit of a weird example, but I know if you have children, you'll really be able to relate to that, the challenges of labour. But I was able to go into my 3rd and 4th kind of labours, knowing full well that I'd been through it before, that I knew how to handle pain, that I'm the sort of person that, that pain doesn't last forever, but I'm the sort of person who can breathe my way through it and stay focused and get there in the end. So a bit of a strange example for you, which you won't be able to relate to if you haven't had children. But perhaps that example of maybe not being evicted, but of something going wrong in your past and not being as you expected, maybe that resonates too. So don't leave those difficult, more challenging experiences in dark corners of your mind and never visiting them. What I want to invite you to do is to go back and visit them and find the backstory, the story of how you got here, which talks about the strength, the determination you showed, the courage you showed, the resilience you're able to show, and all of the other qualities that are so important for you today in your day-to-day life and work, and will continue to be important as you go through life, because life's an arena, right? There is always the next challenge around the corner. So how does this all fit in with the bigger picture of imposter syndrome? So you'll remember that I talked about imposter syndrome not being a problem that you need to solve. It's, not being a problem that you need to fix. It's a puzzle that you need to solve. And your backstory is a really key part of that puzzle. And together with the first 3 steps of the imposter speech, which I've already talked about in previous lives, the backstory adds the 4th layer of your imposter speech that enables you to solve this puzzle of effectively, who are you? That's what your imposter syndrome is asking you. Who are you? And knowing your backstory, the story of how you got here through all the trials and tribulations and what it took, is a key, essential part of who you are. So don't leave it behind. Don't leave it on the table. So I want to finish by giving you some examples of how your backstory might be working against you right now and you don't even know it. So here are 3 clues that your backstory isn't working for you. First of all, whenever you encounter a difficulty or a setback, you feel you can't cope. You feel that it's something that's like another challenge, you're not going to be up to it, you're not good enough, you're not clever enough, you're not X enough. And that's your reaction when things get hard or something unexpected happens. You think you can't cope. That is a sure sign that your backstory is working against you, by which I mean you still think about, well, you either don't think about things that have happened to you in the past and the way you've come out of them, or you still think about those events in a very negative sense of what was bad about them. And as a result of that, anything new that comes along that is challenging or difficult is also going to feel overwhelming and daunting for you. So that's clue number 1. The second clue that your backstory is working against you is you find that any real memory of the past or thought or any memory you have of specific situations in the past really triggers you. So you experience those same emotions over and over again. So the reliving the disappointment, reliving the pain, reliving maybe the humiliation or whatever it was that was really difficult for you. If you are still, those emotions, such powerful but negative emotions, are still triggered when you think about past events, then that means your backstory is working against you. And it's a really good sign, important sign that this is work that you need to do. Find a way to own your backstory in a way that serves you. So the third and final clue that your backstory is working against you is when something happens around you, to you, you have the feeling that you are a victim of circumstances. Now, don't get me wrong, most of us don't in our head think I'm a victim of circumstances, but what we do is we behave like victims by blaming the circumstances, blaming other people, blaming things that have happened, and putting all of our energy into wishing things outside of us were different. And that is a victim mentality, and one in which it takes away all of your power, leaves you being the victim that gets kind of battered from side to side depending on what's going on around you. How is that a clue that your backstory isn't working for you? Well, because with your backstory, if you're able to own it and find all of those qualities that have the positive qualities that you displayed as a result of difficult scenarios that you went through, when you're able to do that, you're able to see yourself, your own agency in a situation, see yourself as someone who can make decisions, take action, make commitments, and therefore affect what happens to you. So, for example, going back to my eviction story, I've got two ways of seeing that. I could see it as something that happened to me that was really awful, that was really unfair, a really critical moment in my life when I really needed the most secure, most stable environment. And if I just saw myself as a victim in that situation, the chances are that every other future negative situation I find myself in, I will continue to see myself as a victim. And I'll be powerless as long as I'm waiting for the outside world to change, as long as you are waiting for the outside world to change or to be perfect or for things not to go wrong. You're always going to be in that victim state. If, on the other hand, you're able to look at the situation and focus on what you were able to demonstrate in that moment. So for me, as I've said, in the moment of being evicted, the resilience, the commitment, the determination, the staying power, all of those things that I was able to demonstrate in order to get through my A levels and get the grades I needed to get to uni. Now, when things happen on the outside, I am able to draw on that knowledge, that understanding, that owning of my backstory. It's my story. And in that story, I'm the hero who is able to, in challenging circumstances, somehow find a way to win. And I take that mindset, that mentality into my future, into whatever comes my way, a feeling that I can do things, that I have those qualities that I can use to meet whatever challenges I face. So hopefully that has given you a bit of a flavour of what a backstory is and how it can work, and mostly how important it is that you intentionally own your backstory so that it is working for you and not against you. So if you'd like to learn more about your backstory, how it fits into the imposter speech and how it works to solve your imposter syndrome, then head on over, if you like, to the podcast. So the Caroline Flanagan podcast, episode 84 will be published tomorrow. That's Tuesday. Where is it going to, what, I can't remember what it is. I think it's the 1st of April. So it's Tuesday, tomorrow. The podcast will be published tomorrow evening. So why not have a listen to that? It's on all iTunes, Spotify, everywhere. And then if you want to really delve deep and actually do some of the work around your imposter speech and this particular bit around your backstory, then it's all set out in the book, Be the First. So you can, of course, also access it there and find out more. or send me your questions. Have you heard of the idea of the backstory before? Have you tried it out? What are your thoughts about those kind of dark hidden corners of your past where you typically don't want to go? How ready do you feel, or able do you feel, to go digging around into some of those quite difficult, memories, to try and extract from those experiences all the amazing things that says about you and shows about what you can do? Drop me a line, write me some comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks very much. Have a beautiful evening. Speak to you soon.